101.
Hello and welcome to the Morning Watch on Love 101 FM. I'm your host, Simply Marshall. And of course, we are here for the Morning Watch this morning, and we are just having a slight technological issue with just one moment, and we resolve same. Yes, continuing. A special welcome to our listeners on love101.org. And if you are overseas and on the move, U.S. listeners can access.
Well, I think we're having a challenge with Stokely's line. Let me tell you what's coming up, and then I'll try and connect with him in just a moment. In the first watch, we're talking about reducing the speed limit on corporate roads as to avoid accidents. And in the second watch, Africa Day and the Church Part 2. And our feedback question today, what are your thoughts on the speed limits on our roads? Leave a comment on our Facebook page, or you can send us a WhatsApp at 876-997-3125. And this morning's I quote, start by doing what's necessary, then do what's possible. And suddenly you are going or doing the impossible. Francis of Assisi. That start by doing what's necessary, then do what's possible. And suddenly you are doing the impossible. Take a break. When we come back, Stokely will join you for the first watch.
With your old 3310 phone and your digital cap.
Digital give enough cash and prizes if you show them your old digital things them and solve clues. Join the DigiHunt from now until June 25th. Join our DigiHunt for a chance to win daily cash and prizes. Just solve the clues on BitMessenger and share a photo or video of your digital item for a chance to win. Don't have a smartphone? Look out for an SMS. Then show up first at a redemption store to claim your prize. At DigiHunt, Digicel, made in Jamaica. There since 2001. Authorized under Section 58.3 of the Betting, Gaming and Lotteries Act.
Social media has never been more important. Let Films Creative Agency help you to make an impact. If you want to stay relevant, offer convenience to your customers, and quickly communicate with your target audience, you need to contact Films Creative Agency today at 876-543-6701 or send an email to connect@filmsja.com. Leave a digital footprint that will last.
The Jamaica Customs Agency continues to ensure the viability of Jamaica's economy and has instituted several trade facilitation measures for the export sector, including processing of export declarations upon submission, removing the need for doc receipts, rolling out the electronic export manifests for shipping lines, piloting the AEO Exporter Program for compliant exporters, spearheading the electronic single window for trade, J-Swift project, and collaborating with other entities to implement the paperless exporter registration process and online payment services, as well as removing the need for licenses and permits from certain items. Exporters, we value your contribution. Let's keep the wheels of trade turning. Jamaica Customs, keeping our customers in focus.
It's Marriage Models Thursday. Tune in this Thursday, May 27, during To Have and to Hold, with host Colleen Beckles and marriage models of 29 years of marital bliss, David and Juliet Grant from the Jamaica Evangelistic Center. Join us as we talk about everything from dating to preparing for marriage to ministry and to staying married for 29 years. That's To Have and to Hold this Thursday, May 27 at 5:30 p.m. with host Colleen Beckles and marriage models of 29 years, David and Juliet Grant, right here on Love 101, the family station.
Welcome back to the Morning Walk. I am your host, Stokely Marshall. Now, what turns our roads, the roads we drive on, the roads we walk next to when we walk on the sidewalks? What is turning these roads into killing fields sometimes? Why are people dying so much on these roads? Is it because we're speeding too much? Is it also including the temperament of some persons who are driving on the road? Is it just indiscipline, not being familiar with the road code? Some persons simply can't drive well. What is happening? Is it because of lack of enforcement by the authorities in terms of traffic police? And do we need stronger laws or better laws in relation to road safety? What adjustments to the speed limit could have in relation to improving road safety? That's the discussion this morning in terms of the speed limit in particular. We have online this morning to discuss this very important and interesting subject. Dr. Lucen Jones is the Vice President of the National Road Safety Council, and I believe we ought to also be having online Mr. Kenwood here, Director, National Road Safety Unit, Ministry of Transport. Dr. Jones, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Dr. Jones.
Good morning. I'm here. Good morning.
Here, are you? Would you happen to be online at this time, Mr. Here?
Well, he's there. I'm not sure.
I am here. I am here.
He seemed to be having a difficulty hearing our guest this morning. Let's make it go again. Is it Dr. Jones? Are you with us, sir?
I'm here.
Ah, great having you. I'm so sorry there was a delay in us hearing you. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Always a pleasure having you, Dr. Jones, in your capacity as the Vice President of the National Road Safety Council. And just a bit of, if you could help to enlighten our listeners. Can you remind us, for example, who is the President of the National Road Safety Council? I happen to know, but I like it to remind the listeners. And your role as Vice President and the relevance and the extreme importance of this council, sir. Could you just remind us, sir?
Hello, I'm here. Hello.
Yes, Mr. Dr. Jones.
Yes. All right. So sorry about it.
Just a reminder of the importance of the council, who is the president, and your role as Vice President, sir.
Yeah. Well, it's actually Vice Chairman. And the Prime Minister is the chairman.
Yes, Vice Chairman, indeed. Yes, correct.
Yes, the Prime Minister is the chairman. So context is everything.
And,
so
the chairman is anyone who is the Prime Minister of Jamaica at any given time.
Exactly.
Ah, yes.
So the context is important. So the context in which we are having this discussion, one is global, one is local. So the global data is very stark. 1.2 million people die every year on the roads across the world. The data for Jamaica, as of yesterday, 188 people dead, compared to last year, 163. And we've been having numbers like this for far too long. In 2019, 440 people died. In 2020, 433 people died. So because of both the global data and the local data, the World Health Organization, based on research, has been recommending for all countries to adopt what is now known as a safe systems approach. And the reason for this are as follows. People make mistakes that can lead to road crashes. So you itemize a number of things as we're coming to the discussion. But the key thing is that people make mistakes. No matter what you do, people are going to make mistakes. And these mistakes can lead to road crashes. That's the first point. The second point is that the human body has limited physical tolerance of crash forces. If you're in a car and you hit a pedestrian and you're going over 30 kilometers per hour, the chances of that individuals survive in a crash is far less than if you are going under 30 kilometers per hour. So that is a point we need to bear in mind. Thirdly, a shared responsibility exists among those who design, build, manage, and use roads and vehicles, and provide post-crash care to prevent crashes from resulting in death or serious injury. And the last point I want to make is that all parts of the system must be strengthened to multiply their effects. If one part fails, road users are still protected. So the safe system is safe roads, safe speeds, which we are talking about this morning, safe road users, safe vehicles, and an efficient post-crash system. So into this mix now we locate the global push to have a 30 kilometer per hour limit where you have cars and vehicles and pedestrians coming into some kind of interplay. So for example, in half a tree, where you have the center, transport center on one side, and are you hearing me?
We are hearing you, sir, yes.
Yeah. Transport center on one side, Jamaica National on the other side. In that area where you have a whole pile of people moving around each day, those are the areas that we need to target for 30 kilometers per hour, because that's where the rubber hits the road, as the saying goes. So that's the context in which we are pushing for this low speed, safe speed in areas where motor vehicles can come in contact with pedestrians. So a pedestrian cannot manage the forces that are exerted on it, or him or her, when hit by a vehicle over 30 kilometers per hour.
Very interesting that you're saying this, sir, because many people will probably say to you, Mr. Vice Chairman, Dr. Lucian Jones, will probably say to you that 30 kilometers per hour is way too slow, especially if they are accustomed to driving a little bit faster than that. And sometimes the demands of life are such that if you were to be driving from point A to point B at that lower or reduced speed limit, you may have challenges in getting to your destination on time or in good order in relation to how many things you have to do for a particular day. How do you respond to that?
My response to that is in two ways. Well, three. The first thing is that the data has shown that reducing the speed limit on a road, say from point A to point B, the data is very clear. You actually reach there quicker. It sounds counterintuitive. It doesn't sound logical, but that's what the data is showing. That's the first point. The second point is that it's not about you and where you are going. It's about saving your neighbor's life. We are Christians. We are a Christian station. And that's why I raise the same issue about the vaccine. It's not only about you. It's about trying to get Jamaica to reach herd immunity. So we all have to pull together to make this thing work. So the same thing for the vaccine, the same thing for the vaccine for the corona, the same thing for the speed vaccine for road crashes. And the third point,
we are almost upon a break already. However, for your consideration, when we return from the break, how do you see the conditions on our roads going forward, let's say in the next 10, 20 years? Is it that there is a hope that there'd be less traffic on the roads because there'd be less people, for example, traversing from point A to point B? Is that part of the consideration? Or is it that you're expecting things to remain as they are in terms of traffic, but you just want people to drive a little bit slower? Think about that until we come from the break. We're going to take a break right now on the Morning Watch. Stay tuned.
Jamaica Banana Board, Green Gold, Life Health, and the Environment. The time brought to you by the Jamaica Banana Board is
7:15.
You worked hard to get where you are. That's one good reason you deserve to roll out in your own vehicle. Get motor vehicle financing fully loaded with benefits, free document renewal, and roadside assistance from JAA. Plus, car loan and insurance payment all in one. It's time to go next level. Get that car you want and roll out with a JN Auto Loan driven by JN Bank, JNGI, and the Jamaica Automobile Association. JN.
We'll help you find a way.
Flow is connecting Jamaica to fiber-fast internet. Over 250 communities island-wide have received upgrades since last year, with many more to come. Flow is committed to giving more Jamaicans better internet access. And with over $40 billion invested, our network grows stronger each day. Visit a Flow store today or call 1-800-804-2994 to find out if you can upgrade to the fiber-fast experience on Jamaica's largest network.
Respect everyone. We are all made in God's perfect image. The Bible says in Ephesians 5 verse 21, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Let's work together to make Jamaica a gentler, kinder society. A message from the Church of the Open Bible, 12 Washington Boulevard. Join in our worship service Sundays at 8 a.m. right here on Love 101.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokely Marshall. We are in the main watch, and we are looking at reducing the speed limit on corporate roads so as to avoid accidents. And in fact, I'd even widen that to say all roads in Jamaica. Now, our guest at this time, Dr. Lucian Jones, Vice Chairman of the National Road Safety Council, and we are still hoping to have online with us Canute here, Director of the National Road Safety Unit in the...
No. Okay. It's not the National Road Safety Unit. It's the Road Safety Unit of the Ministry of Transport.
Oh, thank you very much, sir.
He's no longer director. He's now in charge of the Island Tropical Authority.
Wow. As I said, yeah, thank you for that correction, sir.
He got a promotion. Yes.
Dr. Jones.
Stokely, can I draw your attention to the added of this had?
Dr. Jones, and to our listeners for some of the technical glitches this morning. But you were saying something, Dr. Jones?
Yes, can I draw your attention to the ad just before we came back on from the Open Bible Church? Submit yourself to each other out of reverence for Christ.
Oh, in terms of road safety?
Absolutely. Yeah. As that perfect answer.
The question I asked just before the break, if you have...
Yes, I heard the question. So here's the answer now. And again, context.
Or answer.
So if you want to have safe roads, and you're looking at the safe systems about which we just spoke, one of the things that you need to do is to have less traffic on the roads. So the less traffic you have is the less crashes you are going to have, and the less fatalities and the less injuries. So one of the things that is being spoken across the world, and it's a no-brainer, is to look at the transport system. So the more you have mass transit in terms of trains or buses or a combination of both, the less people have to use their motor vehicles and the less crashes you are going to have. So what is a very important part going forward, looking for the future, is how can Jamaica improve its mass transportation system in the same way that happens in big cities. So we can't ever hope to be like New York or to have bullet trains.
Why
like
can't we hope to be like New York?
In Japan or China.
Why can't you hope to be like China?
Well, we'll never have the kind of money to have bullet trains.
Why can't we have that kind of money?
What's that?
Why can't we have that kind of money one day?
Well, if you can locate the source of those funds, you tell me.
Well, look, after the second segment, that's where my head is when I say that. But continue,
Okay,
Dr.
fine. So what you need to do is improve the transportation system so that more
Yes.
Jamaicans will want to leave their cars at home and jump on a bus and go downtown or go to Happy Tree, etc. So that's one issue. In terms of the control of the roads in terms of speeding, because as I said to you, it's not just one factor. You have to look at everything together. So if you're going to have safe speeds, you have to have safe roads. And safe roads are to be driven on by safe road users. So everything pulls together. And it's one of the reasons why it is easy to look at one issue and say that's the fault why things are happening on the roads. But the data is showing that it's not just one issue that we need to look at a time. So we need to look at trying to get drivers to come off their cell phones. If you come off your cell phone, you're less likely to hit down a pedestrian. I cited an example elsewhere where one of my patients was driving in a taxi coming down Melrose Hill from Mandeville. And the taxi man had one hand on the wheel and the other hand with his cell phone. He was engaging in a conversation with his sweetheart. Nothing urgent. And he was overtaking all the cars in front of him. So my patient said to him, what are you doing? And he got upset to her and said, do you want me to take you back where you're coming from? She said, yes. And he turned around and took her back and she jumped on the bus and went about her business. So this use of the cell phone is a major issue in the country totally. It's part of the new Road Traffic Act. So once it's implemented, the police can enforce. So I'm talking about things like this to give the context to the discussion. So it's not only that we are pushing for safe speeds so that cars will not injure pedestrians if a crash occurs. We're also pushing to have a safe person around that wheel and to drive on a safe road, as you don't have potholes that you swing from and end up in a gully or end up in a pedestrian. And if you do have a crash, yes, go ahead.
I'm gonna, well, how do you see it working in relation to encouraging persons to drive less on the road, to use their vehicles less, and to rely more on a mass transit system in terms of public transport, assuming that we do improve public transport? How do you see that working? Are you saying that, for example, we might need legislation to mandate persons to use this mass transit and use their cars less? Or are you saying that we should rely on moral suasion to do this? Because if someone has money to buy their vehicle, or they will take a bank loan, and bank loans are a dime a dozen out there to finance the purchase of vehicles, persons may regardless wish to jump in their vehicle to drive from, Richmond Park to Half a Tree, because it's that close, yes, but they wish to drive. So,
it's a matter of management, It's a matter of management. For example, we're not trying to get people to stop buying cars because that's a natural tradition we have had for the years. But what we are trying to do is not to get people not to jump in a car when you can walk down the road or you can take a bus. So the long-term thing is for the government to put in place the kind of management tools that will make the transportation system attractive. To
make it attractive.
Yeah, make it attractive for distances that are relatively close or very far, either one. So rather than jump in a car and go to Ocho Rios, if you had a efficient bus system, and I won't call any names right now, but we can always think of one. You can jump in a bus and go there rather than drive your car and stress and gas and stuff. Then that would make sense. So people gravitate to things that make sense. So you have to have inducements to get people from around the wheel. And it's two things. We want to get more people walking. That's one of the things that we're pushing for also. To get exercise. Jamaica has an extremely high rate of diabetes and high blood pressure. And if you can get people walking or cycling, then you can get them to exercise, and we can reduce the kind of death that we're having from these diseases. So it's a twofold thing.
I do recall a long time ago, can't remember how young I was at the time, we traveled on a train. Well, I traveled on the train. I was the only one who went on the train from one point, from Kingston to another point in Jamaica and returned. But since then, the train service, I believe, I don't want to say fell off the rails, but it was a very nice, interesting trip. It was slow, but...
Yes. No, it fell off the rails. And there are ministers who have been trying to revive it. I remember famously Mike Henry was trying to revive the train system. So those are the things that we need to think about in terms of policy, in terms of big ideas, how we can, and it's not just roads and road safety, it's just mobility, trying to move people around quickly, increase your productivity.
What would you like to leave with us, Dr. Jones, in your capacity as the vice chairman? Because a lot of people are still going to be trying to wrap their heads around the whole thought or idea of driving at a maximum of, is it 30 kilometers an hour? It seems unbelievable.
In built-up areas.
And how would that work in relation to certain roads, such as some of the toll roads, which tend to have a higher speed?
No, man. No. We're not talking about toll roads. We're talking about Happy Tree. We're talking about Mullines Road. We're talking about downtown. We're not talking about toll roads.
What about the roads like you're going out of town, maybe not on a toll road?
The only place we're talking about is where cars and pedestrians come into play. So if you're on another road, then the speed limit of 50 kilometers per hour goes, or if you're driving on highway is 110. So we're not going there. So the essential message you're saying to people is slow down and live, and let some others live.
Okay, so the advocating for the reduced speed limit will be confined to the towns?
Confined to certain roads where pedestrians and motor vehicles come into play. Not the whole town, no. Only certain roads.
Okay.
So the key thing is that where you have a lot of movement between pedestrians and cars, you can't have cars going more than 30 kilometers per hour because, as Zolika Mandela says, a death sentence.
Residential neighborhood, sir? Residential neighborhood?
Well, you'd have to look on how much interplay there is between motor vehicles and cars. I would say yes, generally. Residential areas, yes.
And rural Jamaica?
If you're passing through a town or a district, yes.
When can we hear more from persons like yourself on this? We're having the discussion now, but certainly at some point there must be some kind of conclusion. Anything for us to look out for as we go forward on this topic?
The conclusion is going to come in the Road Traffic Act, which is going to come in soon. That legislation has already been passed, and if memory serves me correctly, the 30 kilometers per hour limit for certain roads is already in there.
Okay. Well, more and on that. We look forward to more on this topic because it's going to be very important for many persons to be advised of this quite interesting development. Dr. Jones, I want to thank you again for being with us.
Can I say one last word before I leave talking?
I'm so sorry, I didn't hear that, sir.
One last word. Please encourage everybody to take the vaccine.
Go ahead.
Please encourage everybody to take the vaccine.
Oh, well, I mean, my interest in the matter is journalistic, but you're the medical doctor. Proceed, sir.
I know. I must leave that with you.
Very well. I want to thank you, Dr. Jones, for being with us on the Morning Watch. Always a pleasure, sir, and thank you for your time and for your thoughts.
Thank you very much.
On the Morning Watch. Stay tuned.
JN Bank Live Online Banking is your quick and easy banking that's safe and secure. Sign up today. Visit jnbank.com. JN Bank will help you find a way. The time is
7:30.
Squeeze the flavor.
Squeeze spicy.
Squeeze out the juice drink, my favorite fruit drink. I'm only choosing what makes me tune in. That squeeze, yeah, buckle or box please. Yeah, popular on street, yeah, apple or a peach.
Wow.
Squeeze out the real stinger with the lunch or your dinner. What a punch it up in abundance for the winner. That squeeze, the buckle of them away. Line made, we're rocking that in the shade. I beg your pants for me. Don't ramp with me. Come on for me. I'm a love for me. Like my strawberry. I'm a appleberry. Let's go. Release the flavor. Let's go. Release the flavor.
Tropical race 4 disease, TR4, is a soil-borne disease that has the potential to wipe out the Jamaican banana and plantain crops. Farmers and visitors must disinfect shoes and tools before entering farms daily. If your banana or plantain crops seem to be wilting, call the Banana Board at 876-922-5490 or 876-922-4327. Jamaica Banana Board, Green Gold, Life Health and the Environment.
Peaches, Marky house they flood out, no? It look like it a kin Papa to you.
What? Marky, your house I go and see.
And me, man, bury the barometer. We still a build right up against the sea, down in a riverbed and Pan Gully side. This climate change thing now ramping up. Rain like trouble when it do fall. And the sea level rise up too. That spell flooding. Build where water no go. I just so smart and steady get
Visit PPCRJA on Facebook for more on climate change.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokely Marshall. Thanks for staying with us. And now let's take a look at the newspaper to see what Jamaicans and others are saying and doing. And we have here on the front page of the Daily Observer, CXC students give mixed views on 2-week extension. It is headlined here on the front page, and you can read more about that at page 6 and 7 of the Daily Observer. We also have here PNP pressure. Party divided over response to allegations against Dayton Campbell. That story by Arthur Hall. Turning now to the Gleaner. Political hit job. Campbell charges overthrow plot. That story by Romario Scott. And another one here of some concern. Sentence suspended for sex with minor. Convict vows to support child born to victim. I'll read a bit of it, this story by Barbara Gale. A 22-year-old Kingston Baker, who was last week convicted for having sex with a minor, impregnating her, has expressed remorse for the crime and is urging other men not to commit the same offense. Coming up next, we'll read for you some of the feedback from our Facebook and WhatsApp question, which is, what are your thoughts on the speed limits on our roads? If you haven't done so yet, leave a comment on our Facebook or YouTube, Love 101 FM Jamaica Live, and also WhatsApp comments and voice notes to 876-997-3125 using hashtag The Morning Watch. We'll be right back.
It's Marriage Models Thursday. Tune in this Thursday, May 27, during To Have and to Hold, with host Colleen Beckles and marriage models of 29 years of marital bliss, David and Juliet Grant from the Jamaica Evangelistic Center. Join us as we talk about everything from dating to preparing for marriage to ministry and to staying married for 29 years. That's To Have and to Hold this Thursday, May 27 at 5:30 p.m. with host Colleen Beckles and marriage models of 29 years, David and Juliet Grant, right here on Love 101, the family station.
Here is a reminder from Love 101, the family station. As we face this COVID-19 pandemic, be kind and support loved ones during this time. Check in regularly on others, especially those who are affected. Encourage them to keep doing what they enjoy. Share accurate COVID-related information with them to manage anxiety. I am Jonathan Fletcher from Love 101, reminding you to protect yourself while protecting others. Stay safe and keep it locked on Love 101, the family station.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokely Marshall. Let's join Siobhan for a look at how our Facebook and WhatsApp friends answer today's question. What are your thoughts on the speed limit on our roads, Siobhan?
All right. Cherry says it would be a good move. It's a reality. Speed kills. When you're driving at slow speed in case of an accident, it is much easier to control the vehicle and the brakes than when you are speeding. All right. Let me see now. Barbara in Falmouth says it's not necessarily to reduce the speed limit. Drivers just don't drive within the limit, and that's where the problem lies.
Very interesting comment. Keep the
Yeah.
conversation going. Anything further as yet?
Let me
Or
see what
that's it
this
for
one
the time
says
being?
now. And then Montego Bay says, I think reducing the speed limit to 30 is a very good idea. However, unlawful persons will still break them, so the measures have to be put in place as stiffer penalties stiffer penalties for those who are careless. All right, keep the conversation
Very
going.
interesting indeed. Very interesting. Keep the conversation going as you indicated, Siobhan. Well, we move straight into the second watch. And just Tuesday gone, it was celebrated as Africa Day. And we started a conversation about Christianity and slavery and Africa and African consciousness and how these things have influenced or affected the Christian church here in Jamaica, and I would even say worldwide. And one of the issues that did arise is what color was Jesus, the whole matter of the black Jesus versus the white Jesus issue, and was he some shade in between? And a lot of comments were made in relation to the shade, and a comment was made in relation to white supremacy. Very interesting discussion. Now, today we want to take a further dive into this area, and we have brought back our guest from Tuesday. We have online, or we should be having online in a moment, Stephen Golding, president of the UNIA Jamaica and representative on the National Reparations Council of Jamaica, and also Reverend Dr. Stephen Jennings, past president, Jamaica Baptist Union, representative on the National Reparations Council of Jamaica. Siobhan, to your knowledge, do we have them online as yet or at this time? Stephen Golding, Reverend Dr. Stephen Jennings, are you both online, sir?
Yes, we're connecting with the guest, Stokely.
We just want to make sure that both guests are, fully online and without any challenges before we proceed with the conversation. One of the things I would like to raise with one or both of these guests today, I'm hoping that they are both back on today, is indeed the whole matter of the fact that, or so we were taught in school, so I was taught in school that Africans sold other Africans into slavery. And sometimes I ask myself the question, shouldn't some reparations be all coming from Africa as well? I know that I'm pretty clear on the damage done to people of African descent in this part of the world in relation to those persons from Europe who had colonized the parts of the world such as Jamaica. But what about the selling of black brothers and sisters into slavery, causing them to become enslaved? Should some reparations be coming from parts of West Africa? I'm asking that question this morning right here on the Morning Watch, where we are not afraid of some controversy and debate. Stephen Golding, Reverend Dr. Stephen Jennings, are you now fully online, sir?
Doctor said, let's take a break. Soon comes Stokely. Hold on. Yeah?
It's Marriage Models Thursday. Tune in this Thursday, May 27, during To Have and to Hold, with host Colleen Beckles and marriage models of 29 years of marital bliss, David and Juliet Grant from the Jamaica Evangelistic Center. Join us as we talk about everything from dating to preparing for marriage to ministry and to staying married for 29 years. That's To Have and to Hold this Thursday, May 27 at 5:30 p.m. with host Colleen Beckles and marriage models of 29 years, David and Juliet Grant, right here on Love 101, the family station.
Bills to pay and funds to transfer? No problem. I do it all on my time with JN Bank Live Online Banking. It's my simple and secure as that online banking.
Phone credit need a top up? No problem. I do it with JN Bank Live Online Banking.
It's quick and easy with just a few clicks. JN Bank Live, online banking that goes where you go. Sign up today. Visit jnbank.com. JN Bank will help you find a way.
Are you ready to bring home some boldness? Well, it's easier than you think. Bring the boldness of Berger to your living room, kitchen, and entire house this Labor Day and get 12% off selected paints until May 31st or while stocks last. Imagine that! 12% off your favorite colors? Create bold moments with your family this Labor Day with Berger. Berger, for lasting beauty and protection.
Everyday living, we make it worthwhile. Real people, real value. Oh, what a style! From kitchen to bathroom, a whole heap of tile. Home and things for everyday living. Nice up your home, fix up every room. Shop every day, shop real value. Fixtures and faucets to catch your eye. We have the options, we have the style. Everyday living, so versatile. Real people, real value. Oh, what a style! Lowest price guarantee on everything you see. Home and things for everyday living.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokely Marshall. We are in the second watch, and we are doing part 2 today of the topic Africa Day, which we started on Tuesday. In fact, Tuesday just gone was Africa Day, and we have back online this morning to discuss this very important and relevant topic. Stephen Golding, President, UNIA Jamaica, and representative of the National Reparations Council of Jamaica. We do hope to have back online Reverend Dr. Stephen Jennings, who is a past president of the Jamaica Baptist Union and representative on the National Reparations Council of Jamaica. Mr. Golding, good morning again, sir.
Morning, Stokely. How are you?
Great, sir. And first of all, how was the conference, or the webinar, I should say, on Tuesday past? I wasn't able to watch all of it live. I went back and watched some of it on YouTube. It's 3 hours long, about thereabouts. Wasn't able to watch every single moment, but I tried my best to watch some of the pivotal highlights. How was Africa Day, sir?
I thought it went very well. There were some excellent presentations, both from our own Prime Minister and from President Ramaphosa of South Africa, as well as our Minister of Foreign Affairs and her counterpart. So, I mean, kudos really goes out to our Minister of Culture, who organized the event in conjunction with the South African High Commission. Very impressive messages, particularly around the issue of reparation. I'm happy to see the Jamaican voice getting stronger and more assertive, especially in, coming through the words of our own Prime Minister. So, as well as our chair for the National Council on Reparation, Mrs. Lalita Davis Mattis. Excellent presentations, and the mantra resounded: reparation now.
Well, almost upon a break already, Mr. Golding. Not your fault, but we had a little difficulty getting you online at first. Now, it's something to think about when we come back from the break. But I'll pose a question now. Are reparations also due from West Africa? Because I certainly was taught in school that Africans sold other Africans into slavery, causing other Africans to become enslaved. Is there a duty on the part of persons from West Africa to also give reparations? Your thoughts?
People have to understand, when we speak about slavery as a grounds for reparation, we are very particularly addressing the issue of chattel slavery, because Jamaicans must understand the African slave trade was not the only slave trade that took place. In fact, the majority of people on the earth at some point or the other practiced slavery or were enslaved. The word slave itself comes from the Eastern European term Slav, for the Slavic people. So this is not just a matter of, oh, you were sold into slavery by me, therefore you should pay reparations. Chinese enslaved Chinese, Koreans and Japanese, Indians have experienced slavery. The point we're talking about is particular to the Eurocentric created African slave trade, which did not allow for integration and mobility socially, in terms of the society. Instead, the slaves were treated as objects of possession. And this is where the real crime against their humanity took place. Not to mention the fact that we're talking about the most prolonged period of slavery for any particular people. And so the onus is really not on the Africans who understood slavery as a means of dealing with imperial expansion, the absorption of new members into their tribe or their society, and a way of dealing with prisoners of war, which was a universal way practiced not only by Africans, by everyone. What the Europeans did was violate that perception of slavery by introducing this chattel slavery, where human beings were treated no better and no greater than beasts of burdens or animals. This is what was unique to the transatlantic slave trade. Even under Roman society and Roman slavery, the practice was not that of chattel slavery. So this term is very important, and it's important that people understand. This is where the arguments for reparations in terms of the transatlantic slave trade is seated. So often people ask, well, why not the Africans paying? So we're not talking about those who supplied the product. We're actually talking about those who manipulated and changed the market even beyond the way Africans understood. Our own Chief Tachi, known as Chief Taki in Jamaica, was an African who traded in slaves. But he himself, when he was stripped and sold into slavery and brought over to Jamaica, began to have a fuller understanding, which led to his own revolt and his own, rebellion, as they call it. We call it the Chief Tachi War. The Easter Rebellion, they called it, of 1760. So I offer that as an example because people have to understand the issue is not with slavery. Every society has participated in that. What the Europeans did was change the equation by introducing this concept of chattel slavery. And for that, reparations is due.
Very interesting, because it almost begs the question if one can even argue that slavery itself is not wrong, but what is wrong is mistreating the slave in the form of creating chattel slavery. How would you respond to that?
Yeah, and before we even get into that, Stokely, also understand, people don't understand that the Europeans themselves during the transatlantic slave trade violated those treaties that they signed with some African tribes for the procurement of slaves. As early, I believe,
tell us about those treaties.
For example, as early as the 1620s, right? There was a war between Portugal and the Congo Empire, because the Portuguese were not procuring their quote unquote slaves through the Congo king. And what the kings used to do is that the people who were traded into slavery were warriors and soldiers, prisoners of war from other tribes that they had conquered as they expanded their empire. Now, what happened with the Europeans is that when they began importing these quote unquote slaves, they had a number of slave rebellions as early as the 1520s, even on the plantation of one of the first plantation owners, the nephew of Christopher Columbus. And it took place throughout the region. In fact, this is why we have the rise of what we know of the Maroons from as early as the 16th century. right? Now, when the Europeans realized that this was not working, they began to go outside of the bounds of those treaties they signed to procure slaves and began to actually they didn't want prisoners of war. They didn't want people trained and battle weary, men who had taken lives and were prepared to give their lives in defense of their freedom. They began snatching up now women and children, young ones that they could manipulate and manage better in order to suppress any chance of revolt. A lot of this is not written because our history for a large part in that period is written by Europeans, but this is a fact. And we see it when we begin to study the history of Africa, that not only in the Congo Empire, but in places like Dahomey and other places who are known to have formal slave trading relations with the Europeans, at some point, those relations were all violated because it was not a sustainable thing for the Europeans. They had to deal with too many of the uprisings and too many free communities being formed in the Americas in the early 16th going into the 17th century. So when you look at that compared with how I just defined chattel slavery, you see a double violation. Double violation. So there are actually enslaved Africans, many of them descended here from Africans who were kidnapped straight out, were not sold by their own African ancestors, but were straight up kidnapped in violation of those slave trading treaties, a number of them. And the primary reason for this was slave rebellions and slave insurrections that took place from the ports of Africa on the ships across the Atlantic into the ports of the Americas. We're talking about places like Colombia, Venezuela, Brazil, Jamaica, Haiti, all places where early Maroon communities were formed by these first set of prisoners of war who were trained for battle and prepared for battle.
And I will declare interest. I am told, I am advised by my late mother that her grandfather was a Maroon. So I guess I have Maroon blood in me, Mr. Golding. I don't know, but I'm told that.
Yes, we all have Maroon blood in us, and when we say blood, it's the same blood in all of us. It's the same blood. The Maroons were simply just that military class within the Africans who were trafficked at that time, and a military class that was strong enough to establish their own communities and their own kingdoms in the Americas, something we give very little attention to. Many Jamaicans speak as if Maroons only existed in Jamaica, when the first Maroons appeared in places like Venezuela and Peru and Colombia and other places from as early as the 1500s, before our own Nani and Kojo, who came about in the 1600s.
Okay, so what you're essentially saying in a nutshell is that chattel slavery was the real issue at the time because all cultures had practiced some form of slavery. Of course, now in the 21st century, no form of slavery is permitted or should be allowed. But
yes,
then,
I hope they hear you loud and clear in places like Libya and Mauritania.
We need a discussion on that, Mr. Golding, because I'm very disturbed about what I hear is happening in Libya, but more anon on that. But I want to turn attention a little bit more to the conference or the webinar that was held just Tuesday gone. I listened to a lot of what Mr. Garvey said, Dr. Garvey said, I'm so sorry.
Yes.
Julius Garvey, the son of late national hero Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And he said some very interesting things. It almost sounded like one of those very stellar lectures that you do on a, of course, Africa Day was a momentous occasion. Now, Dr. Garvey indicated that we really need to have a mind shift. And I'm paraphrasing because to go through everything he said would be difficult, but he really indicated we need to have a mind shift.
Yes.
In how we as people see ourselves and how we position ourselves even in our own thoughts. And the president of South Africa also said similar words, but I think Dr. Garvey's presentation was a little bit more on the academic side, and he made it very clear that there was even reference to the fact that the Russians built an Iron Curtain to protect the development of their culture. The Chinese built their curtain to protect the development of their own culture. And Dr. Garvey made reference to something we have discussed here on the Morning Watch, known as surveillance capitalism, that we have moved from industrial capitalism into surveillance capitalism, which this form of capitalism might even be more dangerous than the previous one. Any comments on that? Because someone might ask, why talk about these things on Africa Day? Can you help us? Why discuss those sorts of things on Africa Day?
Dr. Garvey's presentation was very good, and it's one I've seen him give on numerous occasions. He's really speaking to the need for us to implement seriously the teachings of Garveyism throughout our educational experience here in Jamaica. It's something that we've spoken about for a long time, but something that we have failed to put into practice in terms of the mainstream. The UNI itself has done tremendous work in that area over the past almost 2 decades. We were responsible for establishing Marcus Garvey clubs on the teacher training institutions. That went on for over a decade, and of recent, some of the teacher training institutions are now beginning to implement Garveyism courses. We have called for it to be made compulsory so that every teacher is exposed to Garveyism at some point, regardless of what faculty they are headed towards or what faculty they choose to specialize in. And this is very, very, very important, because it is the teachers who shape the minds of our future generations. And for too long, we've just been playing mouth service and demanding that they teach something that they themselves have never learned or have never been exposed to. So we've always maintained that the real ground zero is the teacher training institutions, and this is where Garveyism must be implemented very strongly and compulsory. That is what Dr. Garvey is speaking about, because without a deep understanding of the African's history and of his place in history as how it reflects and how it affects his place in the world today is very important. And it wasn't until the turn of the 20th century and the emergence of people like Joel Augustus Rogers and Marcus Mosiah Garvey from Jamaica that we began to have a shift in this narration. For hundreds of years, Africans, because of the transatlantic slave trade and because of the necessary social manipulation that a minority European population had to pull off in order to keep a majority African population suppressed in places like the Caribbean, was mental control. And so the African was raised to believe that he had no history. He was disconnected from his true identity. Out of that emerged a concept of white supremacy, and furthermore, a concept of self-hate within the Negro race, something that persons like Malcolm X articulated very well about. All of this was a result of manipulations, both through education, through religion, through commerce and other ways. We were manipulated and affected, and that is what Dr. Garvey was speaking to. That it is not enough.
Sorry, go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Meaning it wasn't enough for us to just emerge from emancipation and then adopt the alien cultural systems or an alien educational system, or in fact adopt the system of the very same people who were oppressing us prior to emancipation. And that would have dastardly effects, which we are now seeing. We see it in the bleaching. We see it in the lack of identifying as an African. We see it in the lack of true knowledge of African history. Many Africans don't understand that it is Africa that built the first civilizations, that built the first skyscrapers, that invented the arts and the sciences, that plotted the heavenly constellations, as Marcus Garvey said, and gave the world astrology, astronomy, and these things. Africa is responsible for producing those things. But if you were to follow the average education of the average Jamaican coming through primary school and into secondary school, you don't get this understanding from them. When they go to church, they're still taught that Pharaoh is a bad person. They're taught to identify with the Israelite rather than identify with the Egyptian who represents the true African in biblical lore. You understand what I'm saying, Stokely? So it is a suppression, you know.
Mr. Golden, I am being reminded that that time is upon us, but I want to thank you for your thoughts. I will say openly that I'm not into the astrology, but I hear everything that you have said, and a lot of what you have said, Mr. Golding, is extremely relevant and important. And we need to revisit some of these things more as a church. And I'm so sorry Reverend Dr. Jennings wasn't with us today. I'm so sorry. I hope we can have him on a future occasion. Can I thank you, Mr. Golding, for being with us today, sir? Please.
Thanks for having me again, Stokely. Thanks for following up on the conversation.
For being with us, and for information, now to get copies of the program, call our production department at 876-968-95967. You can listen to The Morning Watch on our Love 101 app. Download it today and stay connected to us, the family station, Love 101 FM. This has been The Morning Watch. Have a blessed weekend. Join Reverend Dr. Darren on next week, Tuesday, as we look at other topical and controversial issues. And thanks to our producer, Kathy Gale, and to our guest, I am Stokely Marshall, handing you back over The Morning with Siobhan Blair.
Time of love is 8:01, listeners. It's time for the program Forward in Faith, brought to you by the Portmore New Testament Church of God.